The glass conference room was dead silent, until my billionaire husband's hot new lover looked down at my arms, saw my identical newborn twin boys staring back with his exact eyes, and slowly let go of his hand. He thought he could freeze my bank accounts, leave me to give birth alone in a cold hospital room, and drag his glamorous mistress to our divorce meeting to watch me beg for mercy. Comment where you are watching from right now, because what happened next proved that karma does not always come like thunder. Sometimes it walks into a courtroom with two babies and a folder full of secrets that will destroy an entire empire. Elena stood right outside the towering glass and steel entrance of Harrington & Co., the city's most ruthless corporate law firm, holding her 11-day-old twin boys closely against her chest. Their names were Noah and Leo, wrapped tightly in matching pale blue blankets, sleeping so peacefully that they had absolutely no idea they were about to step into a complete war zone built on pride, money, and toxic betrayal. Elena looked nothing like the completely broken, exhausted woman her billionaire husband, Adrien Vale, had cruelly abandoned months ago. Yes, her body was still incredibly tired from giving birth to twins less than 2 weeks ago. Her face was completely pale from sleepless nights, and her hand shook slightly as she adjusted the boys' blankets, but her eyes were steady like steel. Deep pain had completely changed her. Motherhood had given her an insane level of strength, and Adrien's brutal rejection had taught her that silence could be way more dangerous than screaming. Right beside her stood her powerhouse lawyer, Maya Chen, wearing a sharp dark green suit and holding a thick leather folder packed with financial documents that were about to change the entire game. Maya looked at her with genuine concern and said softly, "Look, you really don't have to do this today. Elena, you literally just gave birth to twins, so we can easily call the judge and request a postponement." Elena looked up at the massive, cold building, took a deep breath, and whispered, "No, Maya, he has delayed my peace and my children's future for long enough. We are going in right now." As they rode the private elevator all the way up to the 34th floor, the heavy silence between them grew thicker, and Elena looked down at her tiny boys moving their lips in their sleep, remembering how differently she had pictured this entire moment. She had honestly believed Adrien would be right there in the hospital room holding her hand to the agonizing labor, crying tears of joy when he saw his twin sons, kissing her forehead and begging for forgiveness for every single night he stayed away. But Adrien never showed up, he never called. And he did not even know his own sons were actually born until 3 days ago when Maya's office officially served as massive legal team. Even after getting that life-changing news, he didn't reach out at all, send flowers, or say a word, only allowing his lawyer to send a cold, automated message confirming that the high-stakes divorce settlement meeting would proceed exactly as scheduled. That was the exact second Elena stopped hoping, stopped crying, and realized she was completely on her own. When the elevator doors finally chimed open, Maya gently touched her arm and asked if she was truly ready for the storm, and Elena looked straight ahead, her heart racing as she said, "No, but I'm going anyway, because he needs to look at what he tried to destroy." The massive conference room was surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass on 3 sides, overlooking the gray city skyline, with a long, black marble table in the center surrounded by expensive leather chairs, bottles of water, and the kind of heavy, freezing silence that always comes right before a deadly storm. Adrien Vale was already sitting at the far end of the table, looking incredibly sharp, powerful, and dangerously handsome in a charcoal-tailored suit, exuding the absolute arrogance of a luxury hotel magnate who thought he owned the entire world. And right beside him sat Bianca Sterling, his beautiful, ambitious lover, wearing a cream silk dress, flawless diamond earrings, and a practiced smile that screamed total victory. Bianca's hand was resting lightly on Adrien's arm, making sure everyone in the room knew he belonged to her now, completely unaware that the ground beneath their feet was about to split wide open. Elena walked in slowly, the quiet clicking of her shoes echoing off the marble floors as she took her seat directly across from them, her twin sleeping soundly in her arms, forcing Adrien to look up and completely freeze as the color drained from his face. Adrien stared blankly at the 2 tiny babies, his voice dropping to a breathless, raspy whisper as he finally managed to say her name. But Elena didn't even give him the satisfaction of an answer. The entire room became completely suffocating as Adrien's eyes remained glued to the twins, his hands visibly tightening on the edge of the table before he asked, "When were they born?" And Elena looked him dead in the eye with absolute coldness, replying, 11 days ago. A sudden flicker of sheer shock, deep regret, and hidden fear washed over his handsome face as he stammered out, "You never told me," a comment so incredibly insulting that Maya immediately lunged forward to speak, but Elena calmly raised her hand to stop her. "I did tell you, Adrien. I told you the exact day. I found out we were having twins at 12 weeks pregnant," Elena said quietly, her voice entirely calm, but carrying the devastating weight of months of agonizing emotional trauma. "You literally told me it was impossible. You said the timing was incredibly inconvenient for your career, and you claimed I was just making up a desperate lie to trap you, because I knew you wanted a divorce." Adrien instantly looked away, the very first crack showing in his flawless billionaire armor, while Bianca's eyes darted between them in absolute confusion before she leaned over and whispered to him, "Wait, you told me she was completely lying about the pregnancy." Adrien's face instantly hardened into a mask of pure anger as he snapped, "Shut up. This is absolutely not the place for this discussion." But Elena just let out a small, incredibly sad smile and said, "No, Adrien, this is exactly the place. You wanted to humiliate me. You literally brought your glamorous mistress to our final divorce meeting to watch me sign away my entire life. So now, everyone's going to sit here completely comfortable and listen to the truth." Bianca slowly removed her hand from his arm, sliding her chair a few inches away as the silence in the room became incredibly sharp and dangerous. Adrien's high-priced lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, nervously cleared his throat and tried to regain control, stating that they were only there to finalize the dissolution agreement and that personal drama could be addressed separately outside the office. But Maya instantly smirked, opening her thick leather folder and firing back. Actually, personal matters became heavy criminal and legal liabilities the exact second Mr. Vale intentionally failed to disclose dependent children and attempted to push through a massive financial settlement that completely leaves out paternity, child support, and hidden marital assets. Adrien's eyes narrowed into a dangerous glare as he growled, "Hidden assets? What the hell are you talking about?" While Maya calmly placed a top-secret financial document right on the black marble table. Elena looked down at Noah and Leo stirring softly against her chest, her mind suddenly racing back to the exact night 8 months ago when her entire world completely shattered into a million pieces. She had been standing right at the top of the grand staircase in Adrien's multi-million-dollar mansion, wearing the gorgeous, pale gold dress he once swore made her look like pure sunlight, waiting patiently for 3 hours for him to take her to a high-profile charity gala. Instead, she watched him sneak to the private side door with Bianca, and what broke her heart the most wasn't even that they were together, but the way he was looking at her with that incredible softness he used to reserve only for Elena back when they were totally in love. She had followed them quietly to the dimly lit library, hiding in the shadows just in time to hear Bianca laugh and say, "You can't keep living like this, Adrien. You deserve a highly sophisticated woman who actually understands your elite world." And Adrien had answered without a single ounce of hesitation, "I know. Elena was honestly never built for this billionaire life," a sentence that completely destroyed something deep inside her soul, because she knew he truly believed it. He actually believed that the loyal woman who stood by his side when he was a broke, grieving son struggling to save his late father's failing hotel company was no longer glamorous enough for the international empire he had built. Elena had married Adrien long before the billion-dollar luxury deals, the private jets, and the global fame, back when she was just a simple art restoration specialist working grueling hours at a local museum. They had met during a massive, violent storm when Adrien came in to inspect a ruined family painting, and after watching her work patiently for 20 minutes, he had asked her if broken things could truly be fixed with enough patience. She had dedicated her entire life to fixing him, editing his high-profile speeches, praying with him through border betrayals, and holding him when he cried, only for success to bring fake people who clapped way louder than true love ever could. Bianca Sterling was a ruthless luxury consultant who saw Adrien as her ultimate ticket to the top, and at first, Elena blamed herself, thinking she wasn't glamorous enough, until she found the secret hotel receipts, the hidden messages, and the rare diamond bracelet Bianca was wearing in a magazine interview. The exact same bracelet Adrien told Elena was for a major client's wife. When she finally confronted him in their master bedroom while 6 weeks pregnant with the twins, Adrien didn't even deny it, simply looking out the window at the lake and saying with total pity, "I'm just tired, Elena, and I don't think I want to fix this marriage anymore." 3 days later, He cold-heartedly served her with divorce papers, froze all her bank accounts, and completely cut off all communication, offering a settlement that looked generous but secretly stripped her of the one thing she cared about, Silverbrook Estate, the gorgeous Vermont vineyard where they had once promised to grow old together. His lawyers claimed the vineyard belonged to a private holding company created way before the marriage, which was an absolute bold-faced lie. But back then, Elena had no way to prove it. Now, sitting in the freezing conference room, Maya slid the original acquisition agreement right across the table, proving the vineyard was bought 3 years into marriage using their joint bank account, causing Adrien to lean back and arrogantly claim his financial team handled all of that. But then Maya smiled like a shark, dropping a second bombshell document on the table and saying, "Oh, really? Then please explain this illegal transfer order dated exactly 4 months ago, moving full ownership from your joint LLC into an anonymous Delaware holding company." Caldwell's face went completely pale. Adrien's eyes sharpened with absolute fury as he slammed his hand down and demanded to know where the hell she got those private files, and Adrien slowly turned his head, his terrifying gaze locking directly onto Bianca. Bianca's face went completely ghostly white under the harsh conference room lights, and for the first time, Elena saw a pure, unfiltered terror flashing in the mistress's eyes. Adrien's voice dropped to a deadly, threatening growl as he muttered her name, but Bianca completely snapped, back in her chair away as she gasped, "Wait, you literally told me that asset transfer was just standard corporate restructuring. You swore at me that Elena was just a greedy, manipulative liar trying to steal what she didn't deserve." The heavy silence in the room became absolutely suffocating as Bianca stared at the identical twin babies, then back at Adrien's cold face, before dropping a bombshell that made everyone's blood run cold. "And you literally told me the twins probably weren't even yours." Maya instantly flashed a vicious smile, opening another black folder and firing back. "Well, since Mr. Vale has repeatedly questioned paternity to humiliate my client, we are prepared to request an immediate court-ordered DNA test today. However, given his signed signature page on the fertility clinic 3 years ago, the court will find his public denial malicious, strategic, and fraudulent." Bianca suddenly stood up, her expensive leather chair scraping loudly against the floor as she shook her head in pure disgust, whispering, "I need air. I can't do this anymore." But Adrien violently grabbed her wrist, his face twisting into an ugly mask of pure rage as he barked, "Sit the hell down." Bianca stared down at his grip, her eyes wide with sudden realization as she violently ripped her arm away and snarled, "Do not ever touch me or speak to me like that again," before turning on her heels and storming completely out of the room. Elena watched the door slam shut, then looked directly across the table at her cornered, billionaire husband, her voice chillingly calm as she whispered, "And just like that, Adrien, your perfect little empire is about to burn to ground. But tell me, are you ready for what I'm about to reveal next?" The entire meeting completely collapsed into absolute chaos the second the door slammed shut behind Bianca. Mr. Caldwell desperately scrambled to pack up his papers, his hands visibly shaking as he demanded an immediate emergency recess to reconvene with his client in private. Maya didn't even flinch, leaning across the table like a predator and coldly informing them that if Adrien didn't come back with an entirely different attitude, they were going straight to the federal judge to file for emergency financial discovery and massive criminal sanctions for fraudulent asset concealment. Elena quietly stood up, holding her precious twin boys close as she stepped out into the long marble hallway, her legs feeling so incredibly weak that she could barely stand. Maya quickly guided her over to a private, quiet sitting area near the massive glass windows overlooking the city, telling her gently that she did an absolutely amazing job standing her ground. Elena looked down at Noah and Leo sleeping peacefully, a sudden wave of intense emotion washing over her as she whispered, "I don't feel strong, Maya. I feel completely empty inside." Maya looked at her with deep empathy and said, "Listen to me. You don't have to feel strong to be strong, because what you did in that room took insane courage." Elena tried to smile faintly, but hot tears instantly filled her eyes and began racing down her pale cheeks, completely shattering the emotional wall she had forced herself to build over the last few months. She had trained herself never to cry when Adrien brutally ignored her desperate phone calls, never shed a tear when she had to sit in the doctor's office for ultrasound appointments completely alone, and never to break down when she was assembling the twins' cribs at 7 months pregnant because she refused to beg anyone for help. She hadn't even cried when the intense, agonizing labor pains hit her small apartment at 2 in the morning, forcing her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, to speed her to hospital while Elena clutched the seatbelt and prayed between terrifying contractions. But now, sitting in the cold hallway of a ruthless corporate law firm with her twin babies asleep in her arms, the crushing weight of the betrayal completely broke her soul. She sat there crying without making a single sound, mourning the innocent woman she used to be, the beautiful marriage she had fought so hard to save, and the husband who had transformed into an absolute monster. What she didn't realize was that Bianca was standing just a few feet away near the restroom doors, completely hidden from view, watching and listening to every single one of Elena's heartbreaking tears. For the first time since meeting the billionaire, Bianca felt a sickening wave of guilt wash over her, realizing she had completely mistaken immense wealth for safety and protection. She had been incredibly ambitious and proud, yes, but she wasn't a heartless monster, and she realized Adrien had completely brainwashed her into believing Elena was an unstable, greedy, manipulative gold digger who just loved the billionaire lifestyle. But looking at the exhausted, wounded mother holding 2 newborn babies whose father had chosen cold denial over basic human responsibility, Bianca finally saw the terrifying truth. She quietly slipped back into the conference room unnoticed, only to find Adrien pacing furiously by the window, screaming into his phone to find out exactly who leaked those top-secret Delaware files to Maya's team. Then, Adrien said something so incredibly sinister that it made Bianca's blood completely run cold in her veins. "I don't care what it takes. If Elena pushes this vineyard issue, we completely bury her. I want immediate custody pressure, file claims of postpartum medical instability, use whatever dirt we can find. She just had twins, so make her look completely overwhelmed and crazy to the judge." Bianca stepped backward in absolute horror, her stomach violently turning as she realized this wasn't corporate strategy. This was pure, unadulterated evil. She sprinted out of the building before he could see her, completely done with his lies. While later that evening, Elena returned to her tiny, rented apartment far away from Adrien's elite world. The walls were completely plain, the kitchen was incredibly narrow, the heater made a loud, annoying clicking noise at night, and her living room only had a second-hand sofa and 2 small bassinets by the window. But the second she locked the door, she realized it was filled with something the billionaire's mansion never had: absolute peace. There were no cold footsteps echoing down the hallway at midnight, no strange perfume on expensive designer shirts, and no freezing silence designed to punish her soul. Mrs. Alvarez knocked on the door a few minutes later, bringing a warm bowl of homemade soup and joking that Elena looked like she had just fought a wild lion in the jungle. Elena let out a weak, genuine laugh, replying that she thought the lion was wearing expensive Italian shoes, causing the sweet older woman to kiss the twins' foreheads and say, "Then don't worry, honey, because God is about to remove his shoes and make him walk on sharp stones." But later that night, after feeding Noah and Leo, Elena opened her laptop and found an urgent, shocking email from completely unknown address with no subject line, containing one chilling sentence: "I believe the wrong person. I am so incredibly sorry, and I hope this completely destroys him." Elena stared at the glowing laptop screen, her breath catching in her throat as she clicked on the 6 massive attachments pinned to the anonymous email. Her hands went completely numb with shock as she scrolled through secret bank transfers, internal corporate emails, a scanned signature page, and a confidential memo from Adrien's personal finance director outlining a calculated plot to delay financial disclosure until after the divorce settlement was finalized. But the final document was the most devastating, a direct, typed message from Adrien himself that read, "Move Silverbrook through Northline before Elena's team reviews marital property, and keep Bianca completely out of the paperwork because she asks too many questions." Just as her mind began to reel from the sheer magnitude of what she was holding, a second notification popped up on her screen, this time a direct message from Bianca's personal account that read, "You don't owe me a single ounce of kindness, Elena, but I absolutely owe you the truth. Adrien lied to both of us from the very beginning. He planned to discard me the second he didn't need me. and I will gladly stand in front of a federal judge and testify against him under oath if you need me to." Elena sat back slowly in her creaking nursing chair, the heavy silence of the night wrapping around her as she looked over at Noah and Leo sleeping soundly in their twin bassinets. For the absolute first time in 8 grueling months, she felt the solid ground beneath her feet again, not because a wealthy savior had magically stepped in to rescue her, but because the raw, unfiltered truth had finally found a door to break through. Within less than a week, the devastating fallout from that email completely flipped the entire power dynamic upside down. Maya didn't hesitate for a single second, immediately filing an emergency motion with the court that forced a high-profile judge to order a massive, expanded financial investigation into Adrien's entire hotel empire. The billionaire's desperate attempt to hide the multi-million-dollar Vermont vineyard instantly became the explosive center of the legal battle, and it didn't take long for his elite corporate board members to learn about the fraud allegations. High-profile international investors began panicking and pulling their money out, instantly causing a massive luxury hotel expansion deal in Dubai to be completely suspended indefinitely. Then, the mainstream press caught wind of the brewing storm, running front-page headlines that read, "Billionaire hotel CEO accused of hiding marital assets and disowning newborn twins days after wife give birth." Adrien Vale, the powerful tycoon who had spent his entire adult life building a public image based on flawless discipline, elegance, and absolute control, was suddenly losing control of his life in the most humiliating, public way possible. For the first time in months, his name flashed on Elena's phone screen as he desperately called her cell phone, his elite pride completely shattered. Elena's hand shook slightly as she went to answer, but Maya quickly grabbed her arm, advising her to put it on speakerphone and keep every single word documented, calm, and entirely professional. Elena took a deep breath, swiped the screen, and placed the phone on the wooden table, her voice chillingly steady as she simply asked, "What do you want, Adrien?" There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line, and when the billionaire finally spoke, the insufferable, arrogant tone was entirely gone, replaced by a voice that sounded incredibly hollow, broken, and deeply exhausted as he whispered, "Elena, please, I just want to see my boys." Elena closed her eyes tightly, her knuckles turning white against the edge of the kitchen table as she responded with ice in her veins, stating firmly that her sons had names, and that he would refer to them as Noah and Leo. Another heavy, agonizing silence stretched across the line before Adrien stammered out their names, his voice sounding entirely foreign, clumsy, and choked with sudden emotion as he begged, "Please, Elena, I was just so incredibly angry back then, but I made a massive mistake, and I need to see them right now." Elena let out a hollow, bitter laugh that sounded more like pure pain than amusement, telling him that a mistake is forgetting a birthday or missing a phone call, not abandoning your pregnant wife. Publicly deny your twin sons, and try to legally steal the one peaceful property he knew mattered to her soul. She could hear his breathing turn incredibly ragged and shaky as he whispered that he knew he messed up, but Elena fiercely fired back, "No, Adrien, you have absolutely no idea what it feels like to sit in a hospital bed after delivering twins, watching the door every time it opens, praying the father of your children will walk in, only to realize he thinks you don't even exist." Her voice cracked with intense emotional pressure, but she refused to let him see her break, telling him he didn't get to call his toxic cruelty a simple mistake just because the devastating consequences had finally come back to crush his own reputation. Adrien went completely silent, and when he finally spoke, he was crying, desperately apologizing for making her go through the pregnancy alone, for letting his mistress sit in her seat, and for becoming the exact type of evil monster his late father had warned him never to become. But Elena knew that real words could never erase total ruin, coldly telling him he could arrange strictly supervised visitation through the lawyers, because her twin boys were not a magical medicine meant to cure his billionaire guilt. In the explosive weeks that followed, karma didn't come down like thunder. It came like a slow, agonizing suffocation of his entire life as his finance director turned state's witness for full legal immunity, and his mother's oldest friend completely resigned from his charity board, leaving him with one final text stating Elena carried his family legacy with way more dignity than he ever carried his own name. Adrien was forced to temporarily step down as CEO pending a massive fraud investigation, and when the final divorce settlement was hammered out, the judge completely stripped him of Silverbrook Vineyard, awarding it entirely to Elena along with a massive trust fund for the twins that Adrien could never touch. But the absolute highest point of emotional pressure didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened on a freezing Saturday morning at a family counseling center during his very first supervised visit. Adrien arrived early, looking incredibly thin, unpolished, and completely broken without his designer tie. And the second Elena walked to the door with the 6-week-old twins wrapped in gray blankets, the powerful billionaire instantly collapsed to his knees. Elena slowly stepped forward, her heart pounding against her ribs as she looked down at the man who had completely destroyed her life, preparing to place his newborn sons into his shaking arms for the very first time, knowing that this exact moment was about to change the trajectory of their entire lives forever. The weight of his identical twin sons in his arms was completely overwhelming, and the exact second Adrien looked down into Noah and Leo's wide, dark eyes, the cold, untouchable billionaire completely disintegrated into a puddle of tears. He held his boys with a level of trembling tenderness Elena had never seen before, sobbing uncontrollably in the bright daylight as he whispered over and over again how incredibly sorry he was for the pain he had caused. The divorce was officially finalized 2 months later, with zero public drama, just silent signatures that permanently closed a chapter on a marriage Elena once thought would last a lifetime. Outside the courthouse, Elena stood tall under the stone archway with her twins resting safely against her shoulders, refusing to let Adrien touch her, but listening quietly as he promised he had entered intensive therapy, stepped down from his vanity boards, and was completely transforming his lifestyle to become a father worthy of their names. Elena left the chaotic noise of Chicago that very spring, moving straight to Silverbrook Vineyard in Vermont to rebuild her life on her own terms, converting a wing of the beautiful farmhouse into a private art restoration studio. By the time the twins celebrated their first birthday, the gorgeous land was absolutely thriving with wildflowers and rolling green vines, and Elena was finally free, enjoying peaceful sunrises on her porch without ever wondering where her husband was or begging a man to love her. Adrien never missed a single alternate Saturday visit, driving through blinding winter snowstorms just to keep his promises to his boys, learning how to change diapers, warm bottles, and sit on the floor making ridiculous sounds just to hear his twin sons laugh. He even hand-carved a wooden rocking horse for their birthday, an imperfect gift that Elena loved way more than any diamond he had ever bought her in the past because it showed true humility. Later that evening, as they dried birthday dishes together in the warm kitchen, Adrien gently told her he turned down a massive promotion in New York just to stay close to them, stating he wanted to spend the rest of his life becoming a man who actually deserved to stand in her presence. Elena looked at him, realizing the arrogant monster who had walked into that glass conference room a year ago was completely dead, replaced by a man who had finally learned the true meaning of responsibility. Years later, the media would tell the story completely wrong, whispering about a bitter court battle and a fallen billionaire. But Elena knew the absolute truth of her journey. It wasn't a story about revenge or a billionaire's public shame. It was a story about a resilient woman who walked straight into a brutal storm with newborn twin babies in her arms and came out completely owning the sunrise.